Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Fake Rooster here. Today I wanted to talk about the Control mid-season event that we got for Battlefield 2042. I've been away for a bit, so I didn't get the chance to play a lot of it, but I still wanted to talk about my impressions of the mode and how it compares to other mid-season events that we've had in the past. I've covered these other mid-season events in previous videos, so feel free to check them out before we get into this video today. Now before that, I wanted to talk about the season. I've done this a little bit, but I wanted to say that this season has genuinely been an absolute blast, with the new maptions, the new factions, and of course the Battlefield 4 inspired map. The game is generally in a better state, and the future is looking better for the franchise. This season has felt like it's brought back a lot of the player base that dropped off, and is implementing features we've been asking for and expected at launch, such as squad management, which we should be getting in the next update. These mid-season events are incredibly important, in my opinion, for each season, as they can bring previous players that have dropped off the game back so that it can be showcased to them and they can see how much the game has improved maybe since the last time that they played it. So what is Control? Control is a game mode that takes the idea of conquest and then tries to almost take a new spin on it. It makes objectives a bit more significant on the game-to-game gameplay that you run into. In the lore, if you're playing as what is called the Archangel Legion, and you have to take and hold rotating objectives in order to collect telemetry, which will give you access to your team's vehicles. What this means in gameplay terms is that it's the idea of combined arms that Battlefield 2042 said they wanted to capture with this particular mid-season event. The more objectives you control, the faster you get points, and this will grant you vehicles. For example, A objective is the first set of capturable objectives, featuring A1, A2 and A3, with a finite amount of telemetry points, 100 on each objective. Once each point goes down to 0, it disappears. Once all of the points in A section have been drained, it will set new objectives, i.e. B. What this does to gameplay is it focuses the action on specific areas, which actually have quite large capture radiuses, which is really cool for wider fights. It gives you a reason to capture objectives, which in my opinion is a great and natural evolution of conquest, and I would like to see this explored in future season events and maybe future titles. This has been done to a lesser degree in the past in games like Battlefield 4, where capturing a specific objective directly gave your team an attack helicopter or a tank as a vehicular advantage over the other team. What are the rewards? Well, much like previous mid-season events, the reward for this mode are entirely cosmetic, but they are interesting cosmetics that tie directly into the ideas that Battlefield are putting forward with the two factions emerging. One is more rugged and survivalist, and one is more high-tech and efficient. The idea of putting specialists in unique factions is an interesting way of adding the idea of warring factions. But it is, however, only in the lore and cosmetically. We aren't getting different armies. It is still, quote-unquote, the US versus, quote-unquote, Russia. But the more that this is pushed in rewards for mid-season events, it makes me feel that maybe the direction Battlefield is heading in is back to the idea of factions that matter. I felt in previous games like Battlefield 4 and 3, when it was different nations warring and you played as those nations, it was a lot more immersive. It still feels this weird disconnect between specialists and the countries they're supposed to be fighting for. But this is a step in the right direction of adding more factions, and we've seen this in every mid-season event, the idea of factions. I think there's enough now that we could create armies of specialists that are loyal to specific factions. Maybe similar to the idea of what happened in Titanfall 2, where you could fight for a particular faction and get very specific rewards. So what are the objectives? As I said in the overview, the objectives are conquest in style and they rotate. The overall goal of the team is to gain as much control as possible in order to gain a vehicular advantage. Now, what I will say about this is it does depend on individual performance. So as an individual, if you're hitting objectives more, you're going to get rewarded more and you'll get access to vehicles much faster. The control points for each objective are nice and large, as I said, which is great because it means that vehicles can get involved a little bit, but you find that this tends to be infantry only, so it's kind of like you can pick and choose your playstyle when it comes to this particular mode. I will say in the games that I played, although the objective was to get more points, to get more vehicles, I never found games being completely steamrolled by a team that has vehicles and a team that doesn't. That doesn't generally happen. But if you get a good vehicle player that gets enough points and gets in a vehicle, it can make a difference. And I did notice that you can get 2 attack or stealth helicopters in a team. Considering this is a smaller mode of 24 versus 24, that can make a massive contribution to a team's success, unless there was a team that had a strong number of engineers, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I think every mid-season event has had a specific class that excelled. So for Leviathan Wakes, for example, it was really important if you had medics to keep your team up so that you could stay in the fight longer and get to those objectives. With this mode though, as I say, I think engineers are very significant. I did notice that there is a bit of a balance in the team. A lot of people are in vehicles or manning stations within the vehicle. The team's ability to capture points does dwindle a little bit because there aren't as many infantry soldiers fighting for those objectives pushing in. So it does create that intended combined arms feel. You need to have that good balance of people in vehicles, people on the ground, going for objectives and making sure your team stays in the fight. How do you contribute to this mode? Well, as I say, as a player you've got a couple of ways that you can make an impact. The first way is to run assault or support, break your way into objectives early and get yourself set up to try and defend these points, because of course the other team can move in and steal the remaining telemetry from the objective if you're not careful. So this is where the likes of Irish and his APS, support players with health and ammo, and using assault specialists to take objectives from the enemy become important. This is a great game mode if you like a nice variety in gameplay and different ways of contributing to the overall success of your team. In the later parts of a match, you'll want to think about switching to an engineer. Now I did notice that tended to happen. People have that logic in their head already, is that if you're an engineer, you can contribute in 2 ways near the late game. 1, you're taking out the enemy vehicles that they've had to fight to earn. And 2, if you can keep your vehicles alive, that's going to make a big difference to your team as well. Thankfully, with the ability to select any weapon for the class, this actually does play into effect here. You can maintain an aggressive posture by using the likes of SMGs and M4s, M5s rather, things like that, and you know, using assault rifles and SMGs to push, or you can settle back into the engineering specialist and use the LMG and sit and defend points. So I think it's important to play as assault support early game and play as engineer late game, because it is really useful to contribute to the team's success in as many ways as you can. And that was one of the things I always liked about older Battlefield titles, is I felt that you could contribute a lot of different ways. So I'm all for more game modes that push the idea of teamwork and class selection, I guess. Comparing it to other season events, I think it is a fun little addition to the game, and it does add a unique perspective to a familiar recipe. However, I don't really find myself rushing back to this mode as much as I did with the likes of the Leviathan Wake event, which kept me coming back. I do like that this game mode is smaller, and I think mid-season events generally should aim to be smaller in scale. I think that's good. I think that, you know, adds a unique way of playing that isn't just 32v32 or 64v64. And I'm glad these mid-season events aren't, you know, bigger in player count. I feel like it would detract. And it does have a more tactical feel to it, this game mode, as did the smaller mid-season events, which is good, and we want to see more of that, more of those objective-focused, unique objective style of games. And I'd like to see the iteration on the reason to capture objectives becoming more significant for team benefit. It might push the idea of objectives. You do find, especially in big modes, and I've talked about this till I'm you know, blue in the face, but in the big modes you see that the Zerg rush goes to one objective and it isn't particularly useful, you know, it's just an objective, whereas this mode at least tries to pump the idea of, hey, capture this objective, get this thing, and I'm all for that, and I think that could be a unique thing to explore in the future. In terms of mid-season events, if what we've been told is that there is one more season, there is in theory one more mid-season event, I would like to see maybe a limited life mode. I think that could be fun instead of tickets. Maybe you've got 2 lives to complete an objective or something. I wouldn't be surprised though if they do like a capture the flag style thing, because we haven't really had a capture the element mode, I don't think, though you could argue that's what Hazard Zone's for, I suppose, but nobody's playing that. What do you guys think of the mid-season event and the season as a whole? Please let me know in the comments below. I'm still very hopeful and excited about the future of the game and what we'll maybe see in the next season. Hope you guys enjoyed this really quick sort of rundown of my thoughts on the mid-season event and what to expect from it if you still get the chance to play it. Give me a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more Battlefield content in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.